What's happening, my paranormal junkies? Welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, and I'm your host, Danny Whitson. Guys, we got a fantastic show for you tonight. But first, we are broadcasting live from the E-United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. All right, guys, if you notice, we did have a little bit of technical difficulties tonight, so I do apologize. But just bear with us. We're going to get through this because, like I said, we got a fantastic guest for you guys. But before we dive into that, I do want to mention something that I've been following a little closely. I don't know if you guys have seen anything about this, but the New Jersey drones that's going on. Yeah, apparently in the state of New Jersey, all over the place, especially mainly in northern New Jersey, there's a lot of reports of some high strangeness going on. There's drones, and they say they're car-sized drones that have been sighted flying around. And I mean, it's just, and they're coming out at night, and the FBI is supposed to be investigating them. Can't figure out where they're coming from. We don't know, who's doing this. Is this our craft? Is this from somewhere else? We don't know. But this is something I've been following, and it's been going on, the past 2 weeks. You can hop on social media. You see people posting their videos of this. People, the residents of New Jersey are freaking out about it. So really kind of an interesting story. If you guys haven't heard or, if you're not following it, check it out. It's a very interesting topic going on right now. But speaking of interesting, I say we want to get right into tonight's guest, okay? She's a Galactic Ambassador. Ooh, I love the way that sounds. That sounds cool. Also, she is, she's an Galactic Ambassador, okay, specializes in the field of Galactic Consciousness. Now, I love this. I can already tell you right off the bat, this is going to be an awesome guest and a fun episode. So let's welcome tonight's guest, Eesha Patel. How you doing, Eesha?
Hey, I'm great. Love to be here from the land down under.
Oh, so that's where you're coming from too, from the land down under.
That's right, Australia.
Oh my goodness, that is super cool, super cool. Well, I tell you what, if you don't mind, do you care to let the viewers know a little more about yourself?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to just give a little bit of my backstory of how I sort of got into all of this stuff?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'd love to hear it.
Great. So, I haven't always been a Galactic Ambassador. I can assure you I didn't wake up like that as a baby. So there was definitely a journey that led me to this point. And that sort of started around my sort of late teens, early 20s, where I started exploring the paranormal side of things a little bit more. I didn't know anything about galactic stuff then, but it was more sort of like ghosts and sort of other things that I was experiencing. And I had a few strange paranormal experiences in my childhood years as well. So I went through my teenage years just curious about the world around me and learning about just what's possible with the world, like magic. And I remember reading all the books about, teenage witchcraft and stuff like that, just getting curious about those sorts of things. And so that sort of led me then into my sort of early 20s, where I started practicing a very specific meditation technique. And at the time, I started learning it because I was experiencing this paranormal stuff, and I wanted to find a way to protect myself. And so, as most people do, you jump online, you start talking to people. And so I met this one lady, and she said, well, why don't you try this meditation practice, and maybe it'll help you to be more grounded and protect yourself. And so I started doing these sessions with her, and I had no idea exactly what it was, but it's very specific practice called the Merkaba light body activation technique. And what you do is you visualize yourself in this particular sacred geometry. And so I just started doing that on a daily basis. What I didn't know at that time is that specific practice is the thing that you can use to help you connect with ETs. And so a couple of years down the track after me doing this practice for a completely different reason, I had a spontaneous contact with the Arcturian Council of Light. And so that's what kickstarted my journey into recognizing that there's a whole galactic world out there. And then I connected with the Pleiadians, Andromedans. I now connect with at least over 20 different races. all through being able to open up my energy field and those initial contacts that I had very early on.
Okay, so you said that you had a contact with them. Now, how far were you into this before you made that contact?
Oh, I didn't know anything about galactic beings when I had this contact. I knew about angelic beings, and I knew about like paranormal, and I had some experiences of souls who deceased and crossed over to the other side, and they were making contact. But as far as the galactic side of things go, I had absolutely no idea about it. It wasn't even really in my awareness at the time. So when I had that contact, it was quite interesting because I think sometimes they'll meet you at the level of readiness that you can handle. And so they never actually told me straight up that they're the Arcturian Council of Light. What they said to me was, we're a Council of Light. It was very generic. It was it could have been anything. It could have been a Council of Angels. It could have been just whatever, But they felt very loving. They felt, like they were supportive and loving and kind. And they started sharing some information with me. And when they shared with me very specific things, like, for example, one of the first things that they shared with me was what I now know to be galactic sacred geometries. They shared these images with me. And so it came through as a telepathic contact where they would send me pictures or visions or words that would come through in my consciousness. And so when that contact happened, I would take that information, and they said to me, go and share these images with people. So I did. I had my very first sacred geometry DNA activation event. I held an in-person event right here in Perth, and a few people came along, and I didn't even know if it was going to work because, I mean, geez, like I thought I could have made it up for all I knew. So I shared these codes, and the really powerful thing that happened was the very first time I ran that event, 3 people in that room actually witnessed this connection with this Arcturian triangle-shaped starship that we all described, that we all perceived in our own ways. And having had that shared experience, that kind of said to me, well, maybe this isn't made up. Maybe I didn't just pull this out of thin air. Maybe there's actually something to this, which led me to then question further, well, who are the beings that gave me this information? So that then went on another series of inquiry. But I think it was a good year or so before I really understood. I mean, it makes sense now in hindsight. They're giving me Arcturian codes. Of course they were Arcturians, It just wasn't as obvious to me at the time because I think I was quite open-minded. And I'd heard about as well, around that time, connecting with ascended masters, like people who connect with Saint Germain or like other sort of beings like that. And so it took me a while to really piece it all together and to then realize that the beings that I had communicated with early on were actually the Arcturian Council of Light.
So now, like, you're naming, you have the names, you're familiar with the races and a lot of these things. So whenever you made kind of contact, and I'm assuming was almost like a meditation, like a consciousness type experience, correct?
Yeah.
Did they tell you who they were, or were these things that you kind of learned later on after the fact?
Well, yeah, all I got at the start was we're a Council of Light. Could have been anything.
Gotcha.
So, because I think I didn't really know
that term though. That the Council of Light. I've had other guests, with similar experiences as yours, and the Council of Light. So it's something that is used. It's described a lot. So so after this, that you kind of dug and done your own research, or I could only imagine the questions I would have. So
yeah. Well, I definitely wanted to know. I do recall going on a bit of a journey for several months after that, trying to figure out who it is and what I'm connecting with. And there were other things that at that point influenced me as well. Because, for example, I discovered a lady here in Perth, also a channeler, and she was connecting with ascended masters. And so when I saw her do that, and I went along to a few of her channeling sessions, I thought, well, maybe that's who I'm connecting with. And so I tried to sort of use the clues in the environment around me and things that I'd read. But it wasn't until I really deepened in my own practice that I was able to get the clarity of who it actually was that I was connecting with. And those connections continued to happen. It wasn't just a one-time thing. I mean, now I can connect with the Arcturians anytime I want. But I think it took a little bit of time for me to really refine the nature of the communication and to recognize the different frequencies. And there was one thing that really helped with that. I said to you before that I did the Merkaba light body activation. That was really great for me at the start because that's what opened me up. But about a year down the track, I met someone else, and she taught me this other practice of going into my inner heart space. And so when I came across that practice, then I sort of just ran with it. I took it home. I practiced it every day. I just went for it. That's when I started to see that, okay, there's a very distinct difference in frequency between all of these different beings. So because I started to center in my heart and really take that time to go into myself, within my own self, and also connecting to my higher self, that made a big difference too. When I knew my own frequency from within, I was able to then use that as a reference point to then contrast with other energies. So, for example, going into my inner heart space, knowing, okay, this is what the energy of Eesha's higher self feels like. So I know that, and I have that as an experiential understanding. From there, I can say, okay, if I now ask an Arcturian to show up, what does their energy feel like in relation to that? How can I relate to or connect to that? So that's how a lot of my understanding expanded. And then that translated then to many other beings, like, for example, connecting with Ashtar and the Galactic Federation, connecting with Pleiadians, Andromedans, Altarians. I could list many of them. But it was all through doing that practice of first centering in myself, knowing my own frequency, as all the masters say, know yourself first, right? You know yourself, you know your own energy, and then you can, from that space, have a reference to pinpoint exactly who these other beings are with that level of clarity, which I think is important as we move forward into intergalactic communications.
So, okay, you talk about knowing your own energy. So that's something that interests me. Your own frequency. How do you do that?
For me, it was going into my inner heart space, which I realized, so everyone has this. In fact, there's a couple of people that talk about this already. Drunvalo Melchizedek used to write about this way back in some of his earlier books. And has someone else just joined us?
It looks like somebody. Hold on, we'll fix that just for a moment. There we go. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, so basically it was going into that inner heart space and realizing that we all have this realm that we have access to. And the inner heart, if you want to think about it, one of the ways that I've kind of made sense of it is it's like the language of consciousness, because the universe is so vast. There's so much available to us. And sometimes even the human mind can't fully comprehend exactly what's going on. And so what happened for me was I went into this space and I realized that whenever I go into my inner heart space, if there are beings who want to make contact with me, that is the space to